All right, welcome back. You're with us on Trading Hour, and now we'll be diving a little deeper into understanding Capex trends for the year that closed out, and more importantly, of course, the outlook ahead. We do know that it is the capital goods side of the market that has been literally on fire. Stocks like ABB, Siemens, a lot of the railway stocks, all of them going through the roof on prospects of good orders and good tendering. Well, let's get some perspective going. In fact, these are trends that we have picked up from a report that Nirmal Bank put out. It also has some data from CMIE. And this is suggesting that it's actually private sector capex which has trumped public sector, at least the central government, with the overall share in terms of capex in FY23. The total figure, 26 lakh crores. And of course, we have a lot of different sectors which are seeing spending push. Let's also now invite Teresa John, the Deputy Head of Research and Economist at Nirmal Bank, to make sense of some of these trends. Teresa, good to have you on the show. And I think the first headline that really stood out for a lot of us was that contrary to the overall belief in the narrative in the market that it's really central government spending that's driving a lot of ordering, the FY3 numbers speak otherwise. I mean, there's actually a dip on the central government side. Is that because you're not counting in defense? And what's your overall read through with the fact that private sector capex actually has done very well, at least in the previous year that's closed?
Thank you for having me on the show. And to start with, I'll just highlight what the report that what we focus on is the capex announcements. So this is the pipeline which will translate into orders in the coming years. So rightly, as you said, it's the central government that is currently driving the capex based on, if you look at the budgeted numbers, etc. But so this is mainly because of the strong pipeline that was there in the years preceding COVID. So from all the way from FY19 onwards, the central government that was kind of leading the capex cycle, and also and along with the central government, the state governments. Post-COVID, what has actually changed is that the capex announcements are now being led by the private sector. So in future, the central government may not have the same pipeline of projects to implement, which we see as a risk if the private sector capex for some reason sees a pushback. If you have a major global recession, or due to some other factors, if the private sector plans do not actually fructify into actual investments, then the central government will not have a pipeline of projects, to do counter-cyclical spending.
Teresa, for the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us what were the key drivers of the private sector capex in FY23? Because it appears to be fairly lopsided. It's just, one or two conglomerates largely leading on the private capex front. You spoke about air transport in your report, which is led by Air India. There has been a push by a few companies on green energy or renewables. Can you tell us, has this pickup in private sector capex been uniform, broad-based, or is it led by very few pockets?
Yeah, so the private sector capex announcements are, as you said, lopsided to some extent. So around 26% of the project announced by the private sector have come from the chemical sector. Just close behind is air transport, but that is which is at 25%, and that is being entirely led by Air India and their fleet expansion plans. Beyond, you have renewables, and then you have electronics, which is mainly being led by the PLI scheme.
And in the pipeline for private sector capex, have you picked up for FY24, will these sectors, chemicals, air transport, electronics, continue to spend at the same rate? And are you seeing any signs of other industries, whether it's cement, steel, also putting on and spending some more in terms of capex? What can you guide for next year?
So I'll start with metals, since you mentioned steel. So metals was the lead sector, for capex announcements during the pandemic. So in FY21, it accounted for around 36% of the project announcements. But now that share has come down significantly to around 3 to 4%. And given that we are going into a global slowdown or maybe a possible recession, it's likely that the metal sector capex announcement will see a slowdown. Even maybe some of the announced projects can see a pushback because you probably will not see the kind of high commodity prices that we've seen over the last 2 years. In cement, there is a lot of capex happening, but in the larger scheme of the total project announcement, I think that still remains a relatively small sector.
Okay, that is on cement. Teresa, the other space is this entire power space, right? We've been talking about the big renewables energy push. So can you take us through what that is like? And also just to clarify this report that you've put, this is X of defense, right?
Yeah, this is excluding defense. So even the central government doesn't include the defense projects. It's it's X of defense. So the renewable push has been there for some time, even pre-COVID was there. So renewables, whether it's the central government, state governments, or even private sector, there has been significant amount of spending that has happened. If you look at the central government, if I look at it across implementing agencies, so there is SJVN, which is largely a hydropower company, which is now going into wind power projects in a big way. And then you also have, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy itself implementing some like offshore wind projects. The state governments are also investing in renewable projects. And even at the private sector, there are a lot of renewable energy projects, and even some of the captive renewable energy projects that are being implemented. So, but this trend has been there for some time now. So while the share of the private sector renewable projects has probably come down because other sectors have seen a pickup, if you compare it to the pre-COVID levels, in absolute amounts, the renewable energy projects have nearly doubled from pre-COVID levels.
Teresa, finally, let's crystal ball gaze into the future as well, FY24. We know that from the railway side, things are extremely robust, and apparently there are at least 2 more big tenders pending for this year. That's what BHEL shared with us, the management there. What do you think, or which sectors do you think will drive capex this time around? And do you expect private sector to continue leading the way, or will it be more government-led?
So, at least going by the current trends, I think the private sector will continue to lead the way. The government, they will continue with implementation of the previously announced projects. That is my sense. Railways is doing well. So broadly, if you see air transport and railways, FY21 and FY22, because of COVID, there were hardly any projects announced. But now FY23, we've seen that come back in a big way. And I think that trend will broadly sustain. So there is scope for the share of railway projects, particularly among the share of the central government capex announcements, to pick up from here. Similarly, I think you have a lot of the state governments implementing metro projects, across tier 1 cities, and maybe even going a little bit below into tier 2 cities as well. So I think that trend will broadly sustain.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Teresa, for highlighting that. Quite an enlightening report there.